Hi, BLE520 students. Welcome to the screencast overview for lesson 6. I'm just going to talk you through some of the assignments that are due in this lesson and also talk a little bit about the final project. So in this lesson, we're going to continue thinking about both the practical and philosophical or theoretical ideas with working with English language learners in K-12 classrooms. You're going to be thinking about both how to practically, the practicality of planning for interactions and hands-on activities for language learners in lessons. You're going to learn about that through reading about the SIOP chapters 6 and 7. And you're also going to read more about what it's like to be an ELL from Francisco Jimenez's experience in the sequel to the circuit, his book called Breaking Through. So this is going to give you a chance to both identify with some practical ways to make sure ELLs are having access to and opportunities for interaction and application in a lesson, and also to think about what is it like for ELLs from a firsthand account. So those are the two areas of reading we're going to be working through this week. The SIOP texts, the SIOP chapters are going to be your foundation, part of your foundation for the discussion board this week, and also ongoing work on your lesson plan. And the book Breaking Through is going to be your foundation for your reading reflections. So in lesson, you also have a PowerPoint this week that deals with making sure that English language learners have opportunities to interact and also opportunities to practice what they're learning in lessons. And so this PowerPoint is going to support the SIOP chapters that you're reading. So don't forget to view that. You're going to want to read the SIOP and read the SIOP chapters and watch the PowerPoint before you then come back and revisit your lesson plan. Now in lesson 6, there is no RSA assignments due. So you don't have to turn in anything else. You don't have to turn in part 3 until next week. But this is a great time for you and your group, after reading chapters 6 and 7 from the SIOP text, to come back together and revisit your part 1 and part 2 and think about where in our lesson did we already talk about students either interacting with each other and or opportunities for students to practice and apply what they've learned. And then in light of the reading this week, you can go back and modify, adjust, add to, make better some of the ideas that you already included in part 1 and part 2, right? So after reading the text for this week, you're going to brainstorm the best ways to incorporate or revisit grouping structures, techniques, and tools to promote interaction, and further examine techniques that promote hands-on practice or application. And so again, this is just a chance for your group to work together to revisit, new readings, to go back and reapply what you're learning in the class to your lesson plan. But there is no RSA assignment due this week. The next assignment will be due for your SIOP lesson plan next week in lesson 7. All right, we're also going to have a discussion board this week. And once again, I just want to say how awesome of a job you guys are all doing with not only responding to the prompts for the board, but also reaching out and including a question or a request from your peers, so that when you have your initial post, not only are you answering the questions that we've posed for you as instructors, but you're also then including a question to reach out to your peers and get them involved in the ideas that you've already shared. So continue with that great work this week again as you're responding to these 3 questions in your initial prompt. Don't forget to include a question or a request from your peer, so that as they're reading your post, they have a way into the conversation you want to start with them. So make sure to do your initial post, and then remember at the end of the week you come back and respond to at least 2 persons' posts on the board. Okay, so then the last page of this lesson is the reading reflection. And again, the reading reflection in this lesson is based on Breaking Through, the sequel to the circuit by Francisco Jimenez. And remember, you can use any format that's comfortable for you for your reading reflections. You can do a Prezi, you can do a PowerPoint, you could do a video of yourself probably talking about the ways that this book has impacted your ideas about language learners and working with ELLs in K-12 classrooms. But your reading reflection, remember, is the synthesis of the readings, meaning that you combine key ideas or important points of the text with your life and the work that you're doing or hope to be doing in the future with ELLs. So your reading reflection this week is based on Breaking Through. Now, that's the last page for lesson 6, but before I let you go, I'm going to come over here to major assignments, and I want to show you that we have uploaded a rubric for your final project. So here's the final project information, and if you scroll down, you're going to see right down here, rubric for the final project, right? So you guys all know that your final project is due in lesson 8, and I know that you're working hard to review your literature, and if you're doing an oral history project, you're also, interviewing someone and starting to look across all your information from the literature and from the interview data and see how does this information that I've collected address the questions that I started off with for my final project. So as you're continuing your work on your final project, I would encourage you guys to just get in and look at the rubric. So what you'll see is that the assignment's worth 100 points. Out of the 100, 80 points are devoted to the content of your paper. Sorry, I don't know what's happening here. 80 points are devoted to the content of your paper, and then 20 are devoted to conventions, mechanics, and formatting, following the APA formatting rules for the paper. And so what we try to do in the rubric is just outline for you what's expected in your paper. So you'll be expected to have an introduction for your paper, and you can read about what kind of things you should include in the introduction. You're also going to be expected for the body of your paper to make sure that it's coherent, that your interview data and your literature information is synthesized, right? And so that's a big part of this paper, is that you don't want to have a summary of each individual piece that you're reading for your literature review. You want to make sure that you take time to read the various literature that you've pulled related to your topic and your research question. But instead of giving us a piece-by-piece breakdown of what that one article or book chapter was about, you're going to look across everything you read and you're going to synthesize it. You're going to bring it together, right? And talk about the ideas that came up across the literature to inform your understanding of your topic. And so one of the big things for the body of your paper is we should see a synthesis of these ideas, not a distinction between this article said this, another article said something different, but you want to bring the ideas together. Okay? You want to make sure that the majority of your paper you're addressing your research questions, and that as you're writing, make sure that when you're writing the body of your paper, we can clearly as readers distinguish between your ideas and the ideas that come from the literature and or a person that you interviewed. The other thing that's going to be a lot of points, 25 points out of 100, so a quarter of the percentage for this assignment is your collection of literature and or interview data. So remember, if you're doing an oral history project, the expectation is that you review at least 10 pieces of literature. If you're doing just a literature review and no interview, then you need to have at least 25. And as you're collecting and reading literature, just make sure that the literature you're pulling supports your overarching question, okay? And don't really use a lot of extraneous literature or sources. If you are going to use extraneous literature, things that don't relate to your specific research question or research topic, then make sure that's above and beyond the minimum pieces of literature you were supposed to review. All right, so we want to make sure that you're reading the literature that you sought out to understand. And then finally, for your paper, you want to include a conclusion, and you can read here about what should be addressed in your conclusion. When it comes to conventions and mechanics, we're just really looking that there's not a lot of errors that impede readability, right? So a minor error here and there is no big deal, but overall the paper should be readable. And then another criteria is that you're following APA formatting for correct use of in-text quotes and citations, right? So make sure you're formatting your in-text citations and quotes correctly, and also that your reference list follows APA formatting rules. And if we go back to the major assignments, remember you can see an overview about literature reviews, that video that I've mentioned before. And then down here is, writing expectations follow APA. This link here to the AL Online Writing Lab, the AL Purdue Lab, is like my go-to, and it's a wonderful place of information for how to format using APA rules. Okay, so a little bit about your final project and getting into lesson 6. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we're here if you need us.